Everybody, I'm Jeff Henwood. I'm Senior Director of Policy and Advocacy here with Alberta Municipalities. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to I believe, our sixth webinar now, David. Today's one being titled Building Your Grant Calendar. Again, at ABmunis, we're committed to helping you, our members, access grant funding. In 2023-24, we hosted a series of four successful webinars. And are thrilled today to continue our second year of webinars and host the second annual webinar on this helpful topic, again, building your grant calendar. In addition to webinars, we have teamed up with Alberta Business Grants to bring you the latest information on available grants via a weekly newsletter. You can sign up for the Grant Gazette by visiting abmunis.ca, clicking on Joint Programs, and then Municipal and Not-for-Profit Grants. And once again today, we are joined by David Kincade, founder of Alberta Business Grants. David's background includes 12 years as a successful grant writer, totaling well over $10 million in wins. He is the lead instructor for the Advanced Grant Writing course and author of Golden Grant Rules, the ultimate guide for winning government grants. So without further ado, I'll turn the floor over to David.
Jeff, thank you very, very much for that warm introduction. Greatly appreciate it. As I just said, has anyone attended our events before? You haven't? Okay. Well, what we do is we just get down to business. We're going to go to work. So just a heads up, you're going to be doing a little bit of a working session. So if it's possible, be near a computer because I'm going to send a document with you, your grant calendar. So if you can crack it, it would be really great because I'm going to just get you working and get you comfortable with it. And if that's not possible for you right now, don't panic. You can do this later. The recording will be available. So we'll look after you. Some people are saying that, no, they haven't. Okay, so for those of you that are new, we want to welcome you here, of course. And for those of you returning, we appreciate your time a lot. So let's get rolling on today's topic because we want to keep you going. So today we're going to talk about your grant calendar. And the concept was introduced last December around, okay, the next year is coming. December is a great time. You just got done, I'm sure many of you working on a budget to be like, okay, what are we doing over the next year? And then matching grants with your projects. So I am going to begin just that journey a little bit of just a quick story, if you don't mind me going off script for just a minute. And that is a story about my friend, Ali. Ali's owned a restaurant for 40 years. And I know him from the gym. Great guy. He's in his 70s. And I said to Ali, how long have you been coming consistently to this gym? And he said 40 years. And I said, no. I mean, like, I know you've been in business that long, but I mean, regularly coming to the gym, he actually comes like 7 days a week. It's insane. Like for that long. And he said 40 years. And I was just kind of reminded over the last year, my cousin Kevin's another guy. He worked in the federal government. He's retired. Two guys I really admire. And he told me he had an exercise routine for 25 years. He would run Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then on Friday for 25 years. And when you get into grants, it's sort of like you're pushing this ball up the hill. We did an introduction last year of finding grants. But it's this idea that it's a journey. You've got to be consistent at it. We're going to talk a lot about consistency today around writing grants. It's not going to be me talking the whole time, so don't worry about that. We're going to get you cracking the document and working in it. But this idea that it becomes an annual thing in your organization, whether in your current role or a future role, that in December, you open the grants, you do your planning, you identify your grants, and you move on. So and also, I think it's going to develop a good habit for you, which will lead to good things of you becoming more proactive at grants instead of reactive. Because a lot of times people are like, where are we at with grants? And it can feel overwhelming. But the way we kind of overcome this overwhelm is saying, okay, we can do this. You can do a meeting in December and you can kind of crack the grant package, which we're going to do today. And you can develop the skill and you can become someone really, really good at grants. Okay? That is my pep talk. I am definitely not Tony Robbins, okay? But my message to you today is you can do this. There's nothing happening today that you are not capable of doing really, really great at, okay? So with that, let's let's talk about our agenda. It's going to be a bit of a different flow than previous ones. We're going to do a quick introduction. That's kind of going on right now. Most of you have done Grants 101 with me. Some of you said you hadn't. Pia, who's here supporting us today, she's going to put my YouTube channel where where all the previous webinars have been. So you can go back if you're totally new at grants. We will, you can go back and look at that and get more detail if you're feeling a bit lost. Okay, but for our purposes today, we're going to kind of skip that. We're going to go get right into finding grants. Then we're going to talk about getting grants. So we've got a large grant calendar for you today. I'll just show it to you show it to you here in a minute. And then you're going to search grants, you're going to find grants, and we're going to send you off on your next step. Now, something we do just for our key performance, ABmunis is always hosting this, is we just do a quick poll. It helps us understand who you are. It's only 2 questions, and I'll share the results with you in real time. But if you don't mind, I'm going to launch this poll right here. Stand by. Here it is. If you should see a poll popping up right now. It just says, we're just trying to get an idea of the representation we've got, as well as, how much experience you've got. Thank you very much for answering. Wow, we've got a good mix here. This is so cool, this feature. All right. In your mind, take a wild guess what you think. End poll, share poll results. Check that out. A third of you from cities. And about 40% of you are quite new. Again, P, if you don't, I think you probably already did this, but putting the YouTube channel in there, you can go back and you can get caught up there. I'm going to mention briefly what it is, what grants are, so that you're not kind of lost. I don't want you to be lost, but I do want you to know what's going on. So thanks for doing that. And by the way, in here, you're going to be, I'll go back here. In here, you're going to be doing a bit of a working session, as I mentioned, and then there'll be a chance for you to talk as well or ask questions in chat. So objective today is to find you a grant. But quick background about me, if you don't know me, I have all my background's sort of been in government and business, political science, been writing grants professionally since 22, but I worked at the legislature for 4 years, so I've got an extensive experience. We have a Gazette. Pia's going to put that in right now. I just wanted to show you that really quickly. If you look here, excuse me. This is what the Gazette looks like. It comes out every Monday. Some of you are subscribed. Anyone subscribed to this? They like it? You click on Municipalities. You can sign up right in there. And this is part of the ABmunis project that we're working on. So they sponsor all these. So these are all upcoming grant deadlines. And there's a grant search feature, an open grant database for you that you can also find grants outside of this as well, okay? If you enjoy the Gazette, let me know in the chat. I get a lot of feedback on it. And I also teach classes. I haven't seen everyone on here who's live yet, but some of you have maybe taken my class. In fact, one of you is surpassing me. You're becoming so good at this. So shout out to any of the alumni here. Now, about my company, about business grants, I know you're with the municipality, but I always feel it's about building trust. So as you move forward in grants, and we learned this last year, okay, is, you're always honest, you're clear, you're realistic in your budgets. Some of you remember we had Ryan Barber here from Municipal Affairs last one of our previous webinars, and he talked about authenticity, like leaving notes in the budget about what you're trying to do. So don't embellish. So we want to be trustworthy, and you want to kind of build that trust. And that's how I approach grants, and I strongly encourage you to do so as well. We could spend a lot more time on this, but I think we'll leave that for now. Now, after this talk, we're going to get grants, search grants, and find grants. And I've trimmed this back. So those of you, there's like the majority of you have experience in grants. So just bear with me. Okay. I'm going to skim through this quick and then we'll get to the good stuff. But I don't want to leave people behind. As for Grants 101, this first section, it's around helping other, like I always say, this is my favorite quote. You can get everything in life you want if you would just help other people get what they want. And I take that approach in grants. I'm going to show you in the helpful tips section today is when the feds are dangling grants or the province is dangling grants, you want to understand what they're trying to achieve. And if you can approach it with that mindset of, oh, you're trying to achieve, this objective, okay, I can definitely help you do that. And then you can begin to build your grant application, helping them address their needs while walking the line of you achieving what you want to do. A quick fundamentals on grants. Okay, what are grants? You can just read the screen really quickly, but they're taxpayer money. In the class last week, we had, you can just put the questions in the chat. We'll deal with the questions at the end. We'll whip through this, Alex, if that's okay. We talked about the Auditor General, and the Auditor General was around, and Pia can probably help answer your question too, Alex, if you go in there. The Auditor General was value for money for taxpayers. So you've always want to kind of keep those things in the back of your mind. It's free. You don't need to pay it back. And grants can often be called different things like support fund, initiative, program, plan. So it can be confusing. So for all of those people that are very new, please be mindful that it can be sort of confusing at the beginning of your world into grants. You're like, why are these things not called grants? We could talk about why they don't do that, but that's outside the scope of this conversation. With this audience, I'm sure you can come up with some pretty cool reasons. But in general, this is how they work, right? Politicians get elected, they go to the Capitol. There's these people, bureaucrats, who will give out these funds to organizations, i.e. municipalities, businesses, not-for-profit organizations. The one variable that's important today are known as delivery agents. Okay, so just track with me a minute here, but sometimes there's so much money that the government will form organizations that allocate capital. So some of you are probably familiar with the Green Initiative Fund or Green Municipal Fund. Check this out here. Just read that. I think some of you are on the phone call, so I'll read it to you. The Green Municipal Fund helps local governments switch to sustainable practices faster. Our unique mix of funding, resources, and training gives municipalities the tools they need to build resiliency and create better lives for Canadians. GMF is a 1.6 B in a billion program funded by the Government of Canada. So you're new to grants, taxpayer money, governments give it out. Sometimes it's bureaucrats giving this funding out, and sometimes it's delivery agents giving that out. In fact, when you get the grant package today, you're going to see you have the opportunity to be a delivery agent. In fact, most municipalities are a delivery agent in some capacity. So with that, again, there's a lot more resources on YouTube channel free that we've covered in earlier. But the last thing I'm going to leave you with is a lot of grants will fund projects. Yes, there's some grants for operating. We'll talk about that later. But the idea of grants funding projects is a really important concept that you've got to get clear on. And when you're dealing with elected officials and moving priorities in the public, you know better than anyone. Sometimes things can be juggled, but you've got to try to get very clear on what are we doing this year? What grants can we match with that? How do we start being intentional about building really good project scope statements, meeting with these grant agencies, letting them know what we're doing. Maybe you take it to the next level and you make sure when the premier's coming down through the rodeo that they come in and they understand what you're doing. You want to be very skilled and articulate at identifying projects, writing good project scope statements, getting good budgets, and matching them with dollars in advance if you can. And that's part of what we're trying to do here today. All righty, let's get on to getting grants. Just due to time, we keep these lunch and learns, so we go quick. All right, we'll answer any questions you've got at the end. Finding grants. So you will get, one of the things I love to do is if you look in the open grant database, Pia will put that in there right now, but I'll show you what this looks like. But this is the federal one. There's a provincial one as well, but you can put in here a municipality. I won't single anyone out right now, and you'll see the federal money they're getting. So I would encourage you to just become familiar with, like, if you're doing wastewater, put wastewater in there and look around. Get an idea of who's getting money, where they're getting money from, and develop this skill. Now, for your viewing pleasure, you're going to see in a minute here, you've got a ton of grants that are all on a page. I'm going to we're going to attach up. Feel free, Pia, to send that in the chat to people. But here are some other ways that you can find grants. So this is the Alberta Municipal Portal. This is AgPal. That's another one. And there's the Open Grant Database that's part of this. Now, some of you are probably saying, Dave, where are we going to get all these links? Well, the links are in the chat. And when you get this grant package that's coming to you now, if you go to this page here, the methodology section, all of the links that we're covering are here. So super easy for you to find. You're getting this, and you're getting the slides, and the recording will be available for this. So not to panic. We're just giving you an idea. There's a number of free tools and now a list on a silver platter that, are going to be helpful for you. So just open that as it's coming through the chat, the list of grants. You can sign up for the gazettes, both in the chat right now and on an ABmunis website. The bottom of if you go into the ABmunis website, you can check that out. And then the Gazette as well. Pia will put in the chat that. A couple of tips before we share this, before we kind of go into a working session here, is grab the low-hanging fruit. Like if you know your projects, like for example, you're going to open this up. I'll just show you. You might say to yourself, oh, I want to do something on housing or hiring employees. So you're going to open this up. I'm going to give you an example. Go to the top here for a minute. Fear not, it's 200 pages and it's a per grant a page, but you might come here and you might say, heritage awareness grant, and you'll come here. By the way, we did news and updates from the one last year. So if you were here last year, you will see we've updated it for you. And you can go through, and I'm going to walk you through this, but you're simply going to go, high or medium or low on the grant. And I'll tell you why it's really nice. If you put high here and you come to the top of this document, just watch this if you're watching online, and you click on this section of it and you go update table, update entire table. See how it popped up high there? It's just a really nice way to kind of get through and get this list down to like 10 grants that you want. So you'll be working on that in a minute. But I encourage you to grab the low-hanging fruit, focus on one grant at a time during the early stages, especially for you new people. Like, don't get too overwhelmed. I just gave you a document with 200 some grants on it. Just take your time, kind of look for the project, try to go to that section and try to find a grant. And be mindful you can win these grants year over year, okay? So that goes back to the mission of being trustworthy, building intentionality, being trustworthy, meeting them, building those relationships. Okay, now we're going to go into searching grants. So the way you build this calendar, as I just showed you here, it's kind of an individual working session. You're going to open up that grant package, put medium, high, and low. Once you kind of get these built as high, you can then, I'm going to go to this one, watch this. Down here is the deadline date, and you can see it's annual. Oh, it's in February. So as you go through, you're going to get, let's say, 15 grants that are high priority. And then you're going to update the table of contents up here. I'll do this so you don't get dizzy watching this. There you go. And then you just update it. So that's what you're going to want to do. And then you can make notes at the bottom of the document. So what I mean by that is if you go back to this heritage one, again, you can find one. I would just encourage you to leave little notes here. And this will be a living document, but I would just put notes there. Oh, it's a good fit, or, need to talk to the engineer about it or public works, right? Just insert a note on this page. And the idea is you want to try to get this document narrowed down. Now, obviously, you're not going to do this today, but this is a hopefully you're finding a really great starting point about how you're going to go about doing that. Now, a couple of points we want to leave with you before to get you rolling on this, and that is some grants open and close all the time, so don't be discouraged. If the grants close, oftentimes they're annual. Now, sometimes they won't open again, but it's okay. That's what grants do. Some are reoccurring, some open once a year, twice a year. Some will follow the fiscal year, government fiscal year dates of April 1st to March 31st. But you want to narrow this list down and then kind of take it to your group. Oftentimes if you're on this call, if you're responsible for grants, like you don't want to send council 200 and some grants, right? You want to just take them, narrow this list down to where you're going to be. And be mindful, some grants you'd be like, this isn't related to me, or it's a not for profit, or it's for a business. Sometimes you could be a project partner. Oftentimes for municipalities, like if they're going to do carbon capture and storage or something, like you would be a partner on that application where they would build in your area. So if you get really good at really dialed in at grants, like some municipalities are like, hey, if you're a business and you want to invest in our area, look at these grants. I always think they're really dialed in municipalities that are doing that. And then the goal is to match grants with your projects. So you should kind of have a general idea of your projects and then match them with the projects. All right. So if you've got this opened, we're actually just going to we're going to set a timer. I'm going to be in the chat. We're going to experiment with something here. Just open it up. And this is that idea of, oh, here, I'll load it here for you. Stand by.
David, I just want to cut you off here. Sorry to interrupt, but there's some people having some issues with the link, it looks like. Um, P is having issues uploading it to the full group. Are you able to do that
I just
yourself?
did. See if everyone can open that. See if that worked. Just let me know if that worked. Okay, Stephanie's got it. Nice. So everybody crack that. And the slides are in there as well. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, hold on. It's right above Khaled. I don't see it. All right, let me just throw it in here again. It's in a Word doc. It says it's sent successfully. Should see it now, right in the chat. Brittany, right below your comment.
Yeah, it's not a link, it's a Word document.
Yeah, it's a Word doc, everyone. It's crack the Word doc. Yeah, Mohammed's got it now. Crack the Word doc. The links are inside the Word doc. Looks like people are getting it now. We're just setting the timer for 10 minutes. What I want you to do is just find one grant. Okay, Pia is saying, I got you, Pia. Hold on, Pia. Pia's saying the links aren't working. I'll put them in the chat for you here. Here comes all the links, everyone, that we were talking about. Okay, work for me. Great. Okay, people are getting it now. If you've got a question, just throw it in the chat for me as well. Thanks. If anybody's completely stuck, I'm just in the chat. Feel free to reach out in there. So I just got a question about where to ask hi. So you just hear in the title, because all the titles are in the table of contents. So I'll put hi there, and then I'll scroll to the top. I just stopped, and then I click here, and this table of contents will open. I go update table, update entire table. Okay. And then boom, it shows up. So this becomes really slick as you start going high, medium, low, high, medium, low. Less than a minute left here. Okay, there you've got a general idea of how to go through a grant package. I would say some of you had some questions. Let's save those for the end because I'm just going to give you a few helpful tips that might answer that, and then we'll just have a discussion at the end, okay? But let's just move to some helpful tips. I want to just watch our time and give you lots of time to answer. But just a quick recap. Oops, sorry. Quick recap here. Oops. Share. Once you're done narrowing the list, then you can take this list to teammates. Okay, I've mentioned that already. You've got the idea of high, medium, and low. I'm happy to show you after as well. You can leave some notes. And just a reminder, it's a living document. Okay, so some of these grants will open and close. It'll change. The links can be out of date because they're constantly updating the websites and the grants. So just be mindful of that as well. And then you want to build this grant calendar. So with this, you want to build that grant calendar so that you can say these are the grants in January, February, March, and April, and then you can become proactive in grants and help you manage expectations of your stakeholders because you have a lot of stakeholders. And this idea of being intentional, like you're putting the hard work in today, is great. And sometimes if you're new, you can be small or start small and really develop the skill year over year. And also just to be patient with yourself, okay? Because it can be you'll get better at this every single year. A couple of things before we open the floor up. Remember that grants have cousins. So Jill in the chat was saying, hey, this isn't quite the grant. Sometimes if you call the grant agency and you'll say, hey, I want something that's a bit different, they'll say, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. That's a perfect grant for that. Some grants can be stacked, which means sometimes they can be stacked up to 50 and then get another one up to 75. In some cases, 100% of grants, not many. Websites can be out of date, so don't be too discouraged. Some desired outcomes. I would encourage you to get a regular cadence on this twice a month where you're reviewing this. People are sending you new grants. You're probably already getting bombarded with grants like, hey, what about this grant? What about that grant? So you have a regular meeting twice a month where you're updating this list and communicating that. And then use this language, I find, a grant calendar. It's just a good language to kind of calm people down. And I don't mean that, disrespectfully, but I find sometimes chaos can start in grants. But if you say, hey, look, we've got our projects, we've got our grant calendar, this is what we're achieving this year. And that way, if new things come out, you can kind of say, well, where are we going to get the resources to do that, etc. It's just nice. It's just nice language to use. Also know about grant delivery agents. We mentioned that earlier on. The guidelines, Jill, as I was referring to you, the details are in these guidelines. They're actually really good in grants. That's like, it explains how they work. Some of you already know this, but for those of you new, you don't want to call a grant agency when the answer is usually quite easy. You don't want to waste their time. So I encourage people, you can even say, hey, I looked in your grant guideline on page 3, but I didn't really see much. Can you explain this a little bit more? Because you constantly want to be trustworthy in their eyes. By being intentional, you'll be ready for these competitions. Like if you're watching my Gazette, they're having competitions all the time. And at these meetings, you can kind of say, is this worth doing? Are we a perfect fit? And if we've got a lot of veterans on the line right now, and they know what it's like to go for a grant that you're not a great fit for. Can I get a witness in the chat right now? Like that is not where you want to be. You want to be a good project good, great fitting grant. They align and away you go. And you've got a lot to lose. Some best practices. Most of your grants are going to fund future projects on the project side. Your planning is going to minimize the surprises. I always say surprises in business are usually never a good thing. And you want to work on that say-do ratio. Like this, I'm going to do this. I'm going to achieve this by this deadline. And if you don't achieve it, you're communicating. And in grants, folks, if it can be with a deadline pressing, you have to generally over communicate because you're relying on documents for everything in these grants. Like you look at a grant, it needs attachments, engineering or parks or economic development need to be involved. Lots and lots of communication. And I would strongly encourage you to get it done a week before, 2 weeks if possible, because you do not want to be nailing this down at the last minute, okay? In the chat, Pia will put it in there now, but study what they want. Just a couple more tips, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. But there's a really good report. We showed you this last year, and it came out. It's unbelievable. But this, I'll put it in the chat for you as well. But know this one inside and out for sure. And it'll tell you what the provincial government is trying to achieve. We don't have time today. I'm actually going to shoot a video on this. So if you're on my YouTube video, I'm going to do a deep dive on this. But it talks about the provincial government's plan and government-wide objectives. It names all the programs. It's just incredible. If it's a competitive, needs-based allocation amount. And look how much money we're talking, folks. 1.2 billion bucks in those grants. So if you're in grants, you're attending these, by all means, or not by all means, but make sure you're dialed in on that stuff. And that kind of stuff you've got to know. And finally, a couple things here. Just be clear in your project. It's usually a heck yeah from the grant agency. The grant agency is like, oh, you're a perfect fit. And if you're not getting that, it's usually a no, okay? So just in general terms, not answering everything, but you really want strong project fit. Give yourself time, 6 weeks. You do not want to be doing this if it's Wednesday and it's due Friday. That's why you're building the grant calendar. That's why you subscribe to the Gazette and watching or other things that you've got to follow. The best thing to do is find the grants you want and sign up for the notifications. So as soon as they know, you know. That's the best thing to do. But it's hard to track all of these, believe me. Okay, with that, I wanted to end with this idea that we started around being consistency. And I know I talked fast today. These are kind of quick lunch and learns meant to kind of get you rolling. And everyone's really pressed for time, but just keep getting this skill. And oftentimes you don't have time. Maybe try replacing that with something like, look, I'll find a way to get this done. And by putting in the hard work today, you're just grinding, you're moving forward. You will improve. You trust me, okay? I've been writing grants, teaching grants a long time. You get better every year. So work on that, and I'm sure you're going to be very pleased with yourself. So just really work on that resiliency, consistency, and getting better. Our next webinar, you'll see in the chat coming up, we've got we're going to be talking AI and grants, and we'll have more to announce on that later, but you can sign up for that as well in the chat. It's coming up in February. The Grant Gazette, if you're not signed up, and there's a course, one of my courses outside of this, if you're interested, coming up in January, where we help people build a master grant application. So with that, we will turn it back to Jeff and answer any questions that you have in the chat. You'll also be getting a survey. We usually send a survey, so we really appreciate your feedback as well on that.
Dave, I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A at the moment, but a couple of people just wondering if they can have your grant calendar for themselves.
It's in the you should have it. So if that document we went through, it's yours. So it's in the chat. If you're not getting that, Pia's email is in there. Please email her and we'll email this to you. It is for you. That's what you want. It's yours. I think there was some challenges with maybe some people have Google Docs or something.
Yeah, Pia just put her address in again there. So
yeah, and the recording of this, because I know it's fast, everyone, especially if you're new grants, we're just moving along quickly. The recording will be and the slides are in here as well.
Then nothing in the Q&A box. So
Okay. You're welcome, Joe. Thanks for that. That's a good base for you to get started and keep rolling. Any other thing?
in the chat, there is someone asking for a link for the grant writing course.
Yeah, it's also we'll drop in there, but it's also all the links, everyone, that are mentioned today are in the methodology section. It's like of this doc. I'll just share real quick with you. Oh, there's some Q&A
There
questions.
is now, yeah. So we typically plan capital projects 2 to 4 years out.
Mm.
When is too soon to apply for a grant? Or are they all unique with deadlines to complete the project?
Yeah, like it's a pretty good question, and it's more on your second one, but you're going to see some you need to really pay attention to some of these details because some will say we'll accept applications up to like November 30th. I notice a lot of municipal grants are like that. We'll accept applications. Of course, you all know the fiscal year for the province anyway. April for in the feds, April 1st to March 31st. So this idea of like when should we do? If I were you, I would be dialed in on the grant. I would be emailing them, asking them. I would get as much information about that as possible. And I love the idea that you're being in advance as well, because you can. If I were you, I'd be looking at attachments, getting community support, finding resources. In that document I showed you, that is really awesome. How does it help the government-wide objectives achieve their mandate? So it's pretty great. Now, some of them will
Another
be,
question is, sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, yeah. Some of them are going to be like, hey, it's due in 6 weeks, move it. Like that one that just came out, small communities. Everyone is scrambling to get that done.
Uh, can we have finance for the grant course?
Not municipalities, unfortunately. The Canada Alberta Job Grant does fund it, but we have payment plans. So if you want a payment plan over 3 or 6 months, I'm happy to do that as well for you.
There's a couple people throwing stuff in the chat, still trying to find some of those. Um, if a deadline for the current year is passed, is it safe to assume it will land on a similar day in the next year?
You know what? I always thought it would be, but when I update this, it amazes me. Like you'll notice, like Canada Summer Jobs is earlier. In general, it's kind of like in the quarter, it seems to be, but like sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It's definitely not like a sure thing. That's for sure. So you want to be, they seem to fall in the same quarters, but yeah, you've got to be pretty dialed in. I'd be on top of, and even I've tried to email them several times. It's tough to get information at grant agents because I don't think they really know when it's going to open, right?
And David, do we need a complete design before applying for project funding grants?
What do you mean by design? A complete design?
Mohammed, do you want to add to that?
Oh, like if you're doing a building or something, or like a wastewater treatment plant or something like that, I would look in the guidelines. The guidelines will be very clear on that. The other thing we learned again from Ryan was just communicate. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I would look at the program guide in detail because, and by the way, just another tip, folks, in grants, read over verbal because I've seen over the years like the person working at the grant agency, and we love grant agencies, but sometimes they're just new. So read, find out what it is, and communicate. And by the way, Muhammad, just on that, I wouldn't play any surprises with them. Like when you get into grants, it all comes out. So if they fund a certain piece of it, go find a piece for the piece, like the design element or whatever, or the needs assessment, whatever it is you're trying, the feasibility. Align with that grant is what I would encourage you to do. But there's funding along the whole way, right?
Don't see any other questions at the moment here, David.
We threw a lot at you, and we wanted you to kind of do this working session where you could just kind of get your hands dirty, if you will. So hopefully, better than just talking to you, we kind of wanted you to do some work cracking.
Here, couple other ones that people put in the chat here is, do you think it could be damaging submitting an incomplete application?
It's normally you think the answer would be it would be very bad, but it would depend on the grants. A lot of them, they'll say no. But more on the innovation side, I would communicate with them to say, hey, this is an example, okay? In general, you want to submit a completed applications, and most grants will obviously want a completed application. But if you're doing something that's quite innovative and your pro forma is changing, if you will, I would speak with them and say, hey, look, we've got this current draft. It's going to change substantially over the next 3 weeks. Can we submit this and submit the updated version later and see what they say?
And David, for projects that ask you to share your idea prior to being considered for a full application, how in depth should your initial pitch be?
Well, it's a pretty good one. So what you want to get into, Jeffrey, is a really good project scope statement. So you want to be able to say, what are the deliverables? Why are you doing it? How are you doing? What are you not doing? What are the constraints? So the idea of if I were you is you want to submit a detailed project scope statement. So and say, this is what we're doing. They can look at it and they can say, no or yes. What you generally want to avoid is vagueness, right? Because that's just like, that's not fun, right? They look at it and they're like, not really sure. Then nobody's happy. I'd rather say, this is what we're doing to the best of our ability. We think it aligns with your grant. Yes or no. Go no milestone. I could go off on this, but I'll stop there. I think you get it.
Next question, David, is I've been following up on the course grant. When is the open date and how is the application? Hard or easy?
Like the training grant, the Canada Alberta job grant for the course that opens in April. You can reach out to us. We can help you submit it. It's not overly complex. See you later, Samantha. Thanks for coming.
David, can we apply multiple grants for each individual project?
Yeah, that's when you get into stacking, right? So again, the details will be in the guidelines. Some will say you can stack, some will say you can't. But that's where kind of like a really good grant writer will be like, okay, here's like 3 grants. I'm talking to them. Can they be put together? Maybe for different phases. That's when you become a legend in your community, like in your area, when they're like, they roll out the red carpet when you come walking in. See you later. Thanks, Tanya.
And David, can we apply, can you please explain a letter of interest?
Well, a letter of interest, usually a grant will have 2 phases, right? So you'll get like, hey, full application. But what happens often, in my opinion, is people do all these work and it's like, oh, you weren't even close. So this letter of intent, they're called expression of interest. They have different names for it. But essentially, it's similar to the question I got earlier around you've got to get the skill of how to answer project questions. So you can say, this is what we're doing. Can we go to the next round, which will be a full application? It's like a go no milestone. So it's important that you do that.
And
Oh,
say, David, is there any risk about asking too many questions and annoying?
yeah,
Uh,
there is. Yeah. Don't be annoying. You want to be liked, you want to be trusted. However, if I was going to do that, I would put them in and I would even reference the guide to say a couple like typically if you've got too many questions, like right away, and I evaluate grants too, right? And that is, have you read it in detail? So write your questions. Hey, I've read your guidelines. I've set up like this. Could I set up a meeting to go through this in detail? And sometimes, oftentimes the right grant will do that. But be trusted, be authentic, be likable, all of these things. Remember, grants is one human being giving grants to another human being.
David, when applying for multi-million-dollar infrastructure grants, do you have recommendations for professionals or organizations that can assist municipalities in writing and submitting grant applications or even stacking multiple grants effectively?
It's an interesting question. Now, go back to Ryan Barber, and I would encourage you to go back. It's called Meeting Grant Agencies. Watch that webinar. It was fascinating because he talked about they were getting applications that were very similar, like the same consult. And I don't want to get sued here. Okay, I'm not mentioning names, but they were all looking alike. So it seemed like multiple municipalities were using one firm to do. So he was talking about the importance of making it unique to your area. And that's kind of why I showed you that document earlier, Sierra, around what are they trying to do? What are their government wide objectives? and weaving that into your applications. Um,
David, what is the best way to communicate about a grant?
um, email them, like email or attend their webinars would be ideal because then you're really respecting their time. And Sierra, just to go back to your question, there's no like it's a skill both internally to have the resources and to work with a VIP grant writer, and it's not easy to do. Okay, and I'm not trying to say that to discourage you. I think it's very helpful, sometimes very helpful to have a VIP grant writer, but it's like a great grant application gets submitted with a great client and a great VIP grant writer, and if you're both dialed in, working together, and you're scheduled properly, it can be very effective. Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, David. Don't see anything else coming into the Q&A box here, David. So
There was a couple hands up there. Are they Alex or Paul? Did you get your questions answered, Alex or Paul? Maybe just throw it in the chat if you've got it. You're welcome. Paul, okay, good. Sorry, up accidentally. Okay, no problem. Well, that was action packed. Um, Hope that you got some value today. Email us if you need anything, if there's anything that was missed. You will get a survey. Like we're always trying to improve these, so please let us know. It's always an honor and a privilege to serve you, especially you people who have been around a long time. To have your time, I really respect. So thank you very much.
thank you very much, David.
Okay.
All
See you
right.
later. See you later. We'll have your you can watch the YouTube channel. It'll be up in the ABmunis website as well. Okay. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
See you now.